Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the Telehead Audiobook channel, where stories come to life through the magic of sound. I am your host, Telehead, and I'm here to guide you through a world of imagination. Hawthorne crossed over and ended up in a saintly monastery full of beautiful women. Here, he met intellectual and gentle Sister Heidi, petite and aloof Sister Yuta, knowledgeable and gentle Sister Butterfly, and Sister Celine, who had a leader's temperament, maturity, and steadiness. But having cleared the pure love route in the game Which Monastery, he knew very well that each of them was a terrifying monster that devoured people without blinking an eye. So, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. Let's embark on this adventure together.
Chapter 16, Kitchen Encounter, Yuta's Killing Intent. Realizing the other person's identity, Hawthorne suddenly felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet, then shooting straight to his forehead. Oh my, I thought witches generally don't come to the kitchen. Especially Yuta, the guy who kills before eating. Theoretically, wouldn't he need a kitchen even less to feed himself? How did she end up here? Hawthorne wanted to curse in his heart. It's like playing Resident Evil, where you enter a safe room, only to find a tyrant waiting for you inside. It's thrilling. He cursed inwardly, feeling so nervous that he broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, Yuta's mind was also filled with confusion. She was originally just curious and wanted to come to the kitchen to see the knives. Blade, which not only implies her fighting style, but also relates to her essence and origin. In short, due to some personal reasons, she is very interested in sharp metal objects that can be used to cut other things. Today, she suddenly had the urge to see what kind of knives are used in the kitchen of her own monastery. But I never expected that after a few years, this place has become a completely different world. She couldn't believe it. She had only been here for a short while and yet a human had managed to barge in. And still the audacious person who dares to defile the pure body of the witch with white hair. Thinking of that day, the strong scent of debauchery and desire that I smelled in Heidi's room, Ada's anger surged up in her heart. Why are you here? She asked directly, her gaze sharp, but only temporarily. Considering Heidi's relationship, she didn't have any immediate plans to take action. And in response to this, Hawthorne did not dare to neglect. He lowered his head and said, Miss Heidi is busy with her daily work and has no time to take care of me. Therefore, after I am able to get out of bed, she instructed me to come to the kitchen every day and cook for myself. Even though the appearance of this witch can be described as stunning, she clearly does not wear any makeup. Her long eyelashes, purple-red eyes, delicate nose, and thin lips are all exquisitely crafted like the lines carved out by the most skilled artist, almost causing him to fall into their enchantment. But he also absolutely dared not meet her gaze. How could he guarantee that if this witch were to slightly lose her temper, she wouldn't use her sharp eyes to twist his own eyes into 2 pieces of minced meat? Fortunately, at least for now, Yuta does not have this plan. She looked at the kitchen, which had a noticeably different size and appearance, and a growing confusion in her heart gradually unraveled. Oh, so you're saying that Heidi was the one behind the big kitchen renovation? But, looking ahead, Hawthorne, who was able to freely move around in the monastery, had a slight dissatisfaction with Heidi in her heart. This guy, why is he becoming more and more reckless with the food he catches? No, we need to be prepared and kill him as soon as possible. She looked at Hawthorne, her eyes shimmering for a moment, her expression softened, and she whispered, Why are you so nervous? I won't hurt you. However, upon hearing this, Hawthorne's muscles tightened all over his body, his hair stood on end, and his heart jumped to his throat. He understood very well that making the target relax, let their guard down, was a necessary process before Yuta killed. The purpose is to enjoy the flavor that arises from the faint sense of confusion in the soul when the goal suddenly dies. She wants to kill herself. The emotion of fear echoed in the chest, and for a moment, Hawthorne's ears were almost deaf, leaving only the pounding sound of his heart echoing in his mind. Is this witch going to take action? He couldn't help but clench his fists, his mind went blank, almost losing the ability to think. Only relying on instinct, he hoarsely squeezed out a few words from his throat. I also know that someone like me doesn't fit in a monastery. But I don't have a home, so I'm very afraid. He felt his brain was overheating, thinking frantically, recalling Yuta's habits, and the reasons she used the last time they met. Under pressure, he could only rely on intuition and instinct, hastily and fragmentedly squeezing out some key words from his throat, barely coming up with an excuse to deceive the current situation. In front of her, Yuta furrowed her brows slightly again, looking at Hawthorne, who was tense and almost stiff with fear. Her tone became stern, tinged with a hint of impatience. You don't have to be so nervous. Our monastery helps the poor. We don't kill or mistreat anyone. Her lies came effortlessly, but looking at his current state, the rest of her words suddenly stopped. She has realized that it is probably not possible to make him relax with just a few words in a short period of time. And for those who face death with tension and fear, in Yuta's view, their souls taste bitter, better not to taste. So, it still takes time to soothe the tension and fear in his heart. Sigh. Humans are really annoying and troublesome. Since that's the case, then. Never mind, weren't you going to cook? She continued. Come on, you do it. Let me see how good your cooking skills really are. She stood there silently, like a cold pillar, without saying a word. Hawthorne couldn't help but take a cold breath. Okay, this girl, she's planning to stay here and not leave today. However, she doesn't really have any good reason to refuse this proposal. I can only bite the bullet and go for it. His hands were full of sweat beads, his steps were a bit shaky, but he had no choice but to do it. He slowly walked towards the stove under Yuta's sharp gaze, picked up a radish, then scooped up a ladle of water from the bucket, and clumsily started washing the vegetables. He has never washed vegetables like this before. In his previous life, when cooking, he would simply turn on the faucet and wash the vegetables under the rushing water. But in this world, he just clicks on the system and lets the kitchen handle the ingredients. He has never done it himself. And in front of Yuta, he simply didn't dare to reveal his true abilities, so he could only deceive like this. The more he tries to deceive, the more nervous he becomes. He can only wash silently while praying that Yuta loses interest and leaves quickly. I'm about to lose my mind. Behind him, Yuta's expression remained consistently cold as he stared at his back. His mind was racing, replaying the scene of instantly killing him over and over again, having simulated it dozens of times. No, he is still very nervous. We can't kill him now, otherwise the smell would be too unbearable. First, you need to gain his trust and make him relax. But, what can I do to make him let his guard down? Perhaps, by treating him this way, Heidi's original intention was also to make him trust her and let his guard down. So, shall I also help him so that he can eat as soon as possible? She pondered this in her mind. Ahead, because she didn't have a peeling knife, Hawthorne could only grit her teeth and awkwardly use a kitchen knife to peel the radish. His forehead was sweating profusely, not only because of Yuta's threat, but also because he was afraid that he might accidentally cut his finger with the kitchen knife. And at this moment, behind him, Yuta seemed to have found an opportunity. Suddenly, he took a step forward, extended his hands, and grabbed both the radish and the kitchen knife from his hands. Put them down, let me handle it. Chapter 17, Blade Witch. Hawthorne was startled, and with one careless move, the skin on his finger lightly brushed against Yuta's fingertip, causing a piercing and intense pain, as if he had been pricked by a needle. He subconsciously let go, lowered his head, and saw Yuta's beautiful little hand, which was as white as jade, shining right under his eyelids. All 10 slender nails were painted in a purple-red color, vibrant and delicate, completely contrasting with things like radishes and kitchen knives. However, he was well aware that with these 10 purple-red nails, each one was a peerless weapon capable of easily tearing through steel. Ripping his body into pieces would be as effortless as cutting through butter. Moreover, at this moment, hidden beneath Yuta's beautiful appearance is her chilling murderous intent. In the moment he was stunned, Yutana's slender fingers, seemingly lacking strength, had already taken away everything in his hands. Then, Hawthorne saw that the kitchen knife was in Yuta's hand, as agile and light as her own fingers. The blade spun a few times on the surface of the radish, effortlessly slicing off its skin as smoothly as cutting tofu, without any pause. This skill made Hawthorne involuntarily take a cold breath. Wonderful performance, worthy of a sharp witch. And this is just the beginning. Afterwards, Yuta placed the peeled radish on the cutting board, and the knife swiftly and evenly descended, slicing the radish into thin slices of equal thickness. Then, it was further cut into strips and set aside as preparation. Perfect. This knife skills are simply comparable to the craftsmanship of a system. Hawthorne sighed in his heart, and then, wisps of faint fragrance slowly entered his nostrils. This is the scent emanating from Yuta's body, a unique fragrance that only clean-hearted girls possess, and Heidi also has it. Since these witches have disguised themselves as nuns, they naturally play the whole act, and thus possess these characteristics as well. At this moment, the fragrance stimulated Hawthorne's nerves. As he watched Yuta's focused and busy figure, a bold idea gradually emerged in his mind. Or, now, take the opportunity to suddenly ambush and purify her. However, this thought had just arisen when he ruthlessly killed it himself. Hawthorne, oh Hawthorne, you really have become conceited. There are clearly better opportunities, so why are you in such a hurry here? She only needs to twist her body slightly and pinch you with her own nails, and you will die instantly. So don't have any evil intentions, life is the most important. He criticized himself like this, and then he heard Yuta say, "What are you still standing there for? Boil a pot of water and soak the salted fish." Hawthorne regained his senses, not daring to delay. He attentively watched her movements out of the corner of his eye, while lighting the stove and pouring water into the pot, waiting for it to boil. Yuta never looked at him from beginning to end, focusing on his own work. He cut the radishes into uneven lengths, but equally thin strands, and placed them in a separate plate for later use. "Take out the bread," she continued, confusing Hawthorne as to what she wanted to do. He had no choice but to follow her instructions and do as she said one by one. The entire kitchen fell into a strange, silent, busy yet peaceful state. Hawthorne remained silent throughout, while Yuta seemed to be performing a monologue, occasionally giving him some orders. Finally, with the joint efforts of the two, a simple dish of salted fish and radish strips was ready after about half an hour. Yuta evenly placed the sliced salted fish and radish strips on each slice of bread, rolled them up, and then brought it to Hawthorne's mouth, saying, "Here, eat it." Hawthorne was taken aback and carefully observed her expression, but unfortunately couldn't read any emotions from her face. "I can manage on my own, Lady Nun, aren't you going to eat?" Yuta shook her head, but still firmly held out the rolled-up bread to feed him. "I've already eaten, you eat it yourself." Her beautiful little hands are now right by Hawthorne's mouth, with translucent skin that is half transparent, with a healthy rosy color, tempting him, making him want to open his mouth and gently bite into that finger, even though he is hungry now. However, he was very clear-headed. Looking at her beautifully painted purple nails, he understood that for this detestable witch, any slightest disrespectful action from him would prompt her to immediately attack and dismember him into pieces. "Hold on, you must hold on." So, unable to refuse, and unable to taste her tender little hand, Hawthorne could only restrain his impulse, open his mouth, and take a bite of the bread. Sigh. Soft bread wraps around fresh radish, with the hidden salty taste of fish inside, waiting to burst open. Its taste surprisingly good? The game didn't mention that Yuta is actually a hidden chef? Is it the system's credit? His expression showed a momentary surprise, and this slight change in expression was also captured by Yuta in his eyes. "What's wrong? Is it not delicious?" Hawthorne shook his head repeatedly. "No, the taste is very good. Thank you, Miss Nun." Saying this, he couldn't help but feel doubtful in his heart. Strange, why is this witch acting so strangely and voluntarily serving me? "No need to thank me," Yuta said, still maintaining her cold demeanor. However, she was also paying attention to every change in Hawthorne's emotions. "Helping impoverished families, especially children like you who are underage, is our duty. So, until you recover your health, feel free to rest here. Afterward, if you want to eat something, you don't have to make it yourself. Just let me know, and I'll help you with it." After a pause, finally, as if still not reassured, she emphasized again, "You can completely trust me, there's no need to be so nervous and guarded." She said this, trying to make him let his guard down. However, unexpectedly, this sentence, instead, exploded like a thunderbolt in Hawthorne's mind. I understand, she is trying to make me relax. Just like a sushi chef giving a massage to an octopus, their goal is definitely not to make it feel comfortable, but to make the octopus meat more delicious. This witch wants to numb me in this way. A bead of sweat appeared on Hawthorne's forehead, and then he forced a slightly awkward smile, saying, I understand. Thank you for your kindness, Miss Yuta. Bang! The door was suddenly pushed open, and Heidi, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth, appeared anxiously at the kitchen door. Then she saw Yuta holding a piece of white bread rolled with salted fish and carrot shreds, feeding it to Hawthorne. Chapter 18, Introduction to the 5 Major Colleges. At the same time, Hawthorne turned his head and immediately saw Heidi's figure. Immediately, he was so excited that tears welled up in his eyes. My dear Heidi, you're finally back. Knowing that he was temporarily safe, he immediately felt relieved and let out a long sigh of relief. And compared to Hawthorne's excitement, Heidi's emotions at this moment were almost scattered. She quickly walked to Hawthorne's side, assuming a fighting posture, and with an attitude as if facing an enemy, she vigilantly looked at the person in front of her, Yuta, and asked, Yuta, what do you want to do to the people I saved? She almost let slip. Halfway through her words, she quickly changed her tune, so as not to reveal any flaws. Seeing her attitude, Yuta also raised an eyebrow and couldn't help but feel a little angry in his heart. Heidi, for the sake of someone, an outsider, are you really going to show me this attitude? The atmosphere became tense for a moment. Hawthorne understood that it wasn't the time to have a falling out. After all, they couldn't win the fight. So he quickly tried to defuse the situation and said, Miss Heidi, don't worry. Miss Yuta just treated me to a meal, that's all. Yuta's cold gaze suddenly turned towards him. It's not your turn to speak here. Hawthorne only felt a sharp pain in his eyes, instinctively closed them, and then tears uncontrollably streamed down from the corners of his eyes. His eyes were injured, and at the same time, anger surged in his heart. This witch. Seeing Yuta's actions and Hawthorne's reaction, Heidi quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Hawthorne. She pondered for a moment, then a look of apology crossed her face. I'm sorry, Yuta, I was just too nervous. The main thing is, Hawthorne's health is really not good. Yuta didn't say much, but glanced at Hawthorne with a slight smile on her lips. Next time we meet alone, we should be able to directly take action and kill him. Yuta was playing her own little game, unaware that Hawthorne reluctantly opened his eyes again and felt a shiver down his spine when he saw her smile. This witch, she must be thinking about killing me. You wait for me, wait for the night of the witch, and see how I deal with you. He secretly made up his mind, but Yuta couldn't naturally read his thoughts. She then stood up, her face still as cold as ice. Since you're back, Heidi, I won't stay any longer. Goodbye. After speaking, she walked out of the kitchen door gracefully. It wasn't until she closed the door that Hawthorne finally let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, the crisis is resolved. Heidi quickly hugged his body, full of guilt in her words. Master, are you okay? Did Yuta do anything extra to you? Sorry, really sorry, it's all my fault, my efficiency in handling things is just too low. Hawthorne's mouth twitched, giving her a gentle smile. It's okay, it's not your fault. It's my fault for not considering this in advance. I should have prepared 2 sandwiches in advance. Saying this, he recalled the situation just now where he felt like dancing on the edge of a knife, with his life hanging by a thread, and he wished he could slap himself hard. Just learned a mage armor and already feeling inflated, can't even bear a little hunger, running around recklessly in this dangerous monastery, not even caring about my life. You have such a lack of ambition, what can you achieve in the future? Today, luckily, I managed to get through it by sheer luck. In the future, this kind of thing, there absolutely cannot be another time. He secretly vowed in his heart, then gently stroked Heidi's head and asked softly, by the way, what did you go out to do this time? Heidi regained her composure and slowly opened the package in her arms with guilt and grievances. I went and exchanged some money, then bought 3 more introductory books for the master. Hawthorne blinked his eyes and suddenly remembered that this was a butter world. Instantly, he felt a chill rising from behind, causing his body hair to stand on end. His heart skipped a beat for the third time and he blurted out, "Wait, where did you get the money?" Heidi blinked her eyes and said, "Butterfly gave me a few of her collected gemstones, and then I sold them. Because the amount is quite large, it took quite some time, so that's why I'm only back now." She explained like this, and suddenly, Hawthorne let out a long sigh of relief, almost collapsing in her arms. "You scared me, Looking at Heidi's puzzled expression, he then turned serious and warned, "Heidi, there's really no need to be so anxious about the money. I haven't even fully mastered the magic in these 2 books yet. When we have complete control over the monastery, the master will have plenty of ways to make money. So, please don't do anything foolish just for the sake of money." Heidi looked blankly, appearing somewhat cute. After a long while, she suddenly understood what Hawthorne meant. Suddenly, she smiled sweetly, and nestled her head into his embrace, softly saying, "Rest assured, master, no matter when, Heidi will never betray your will." Hawthorne held her body and suddenly felt that this girl understood his feelings. Perhaps his previous worries were unnecessary. It's always better to be a little more careful. Still in the aftermath of being frightened by Yuta, the current Hawthorne is cautious in everything he does. And until this moment, he finally had some free time to calm down and take a good look at the magic book that Heidi had bought. Then, as expected, these 3 newly purchased books are the introductory books of the remaining 3 colleges at the Strihai Magical University, namely, Introduction to Judgment, Introduction to Elegance, and Introduction to Silver Filament. And, they all emit waves of magical energy. Obviously, these 3 books all contain a spell that allows him to cast magic spells directly without the need for learning. As long as he possesses these 3 books, he can perform magic spells. Looking at the covers of the 3 books, Hawthorne couldn't help but sigh. "Very good, now I have collected all the introductory books of the 5 colleges of the St. Haiwan Magic University. The total price of this set of books is probably not less than 1,500 gold coins, and if the additional spells are excellent and practical, it may even reach 2,000. "Good job, Heidi," he said softly, and as he spoke, he gently kissed her cheek. "However, with so many books, I'm afraid I won't be able to finish reading them all at once. I need some time to digest the content of these books. So please don't buy any new books recently." Heidi blinked her eyes and then nodded obediently. I understand, master." Hawthorne no longer spoke, then turned his head and wolfed down the salted fish and radish sandwich set that Yuta had made for him. After that, he ambitiously looked at the textbook in his hand. "Okay, now let me start and read them all thoroughly." Chapter 19. Half a month later. Time flies, in the blink of an eye. It has been half a month since Hawthorne crossed over to this world. The process of reading Introduction to Quantitative Analysis went very smoothly, and Hawthorne easily learned the spells mentioned in it. However, this does not mean that he could achieve the same level of knowledge reduction when studying the introductory books of other colleges as he did in his previous life. After all, Introduction to the Mirror talks about the history of this world, Introduction to Elegance talks about arts such as music and dance, Introduction to Silver Filament talks about all types of written works, and Introduction to Splendor talks about biology. In short, they are fundamentally different from what Hawthorne had studied before. He had never thoroughly studied the history of the gaming world in his past life. Many background stories were simply skimmed over. After all, he was eager to start playing the game. And as for arts like music and dance, he can appreciate the performances of beautiful girls, but when it comes to doing it himself, he is completely clueless. As for using text for creation, it is not an easily solvable problem for a science student who often struggles with writing essays. As for biology, it seems to be a perfect match. But don't forget, this is a fantasy world. Not to mention the dragons, who can break the reproductive isolation between themselves and all other creatures, which is enough to destroy all the biological knowledge he learned in his previous life. Between 2 worlds, only the laws of mathematics are completely identical and can be mutually understood. So, after finishing the book Introduction to Quantitative Analysis, for the next half-month, he has been continuously tormented by the remaining 4 books, going back and forth. Even with the assistance of a study room building, his learning efficiency plummeted, and he didn't learn a few new spells at all. However, fortunately, even so, his current strength has made significant progress compared to half a month ago. After half a month of effort, his attribute panel has now become like this. Host, Hawthorne. Gender, male. Race, human subspecies, Qingyin tribe. Age, 15 years old. Height, 1.69 meters. Weight, 53 kilograms. Strength, 8. Agile, 9. Physical condition, 8. Intelligence, 13. Perception, 12. Charm, 20. Occupation, Level 1 Warlock. Warlock class abilities. Contract magic. After signing a contract with the witch, Heidi, you can obtain magic from her and use it to cast spells. The key attribute you use when casting spells is charm. After resting and meditating for at least 1 hour, you can restore all expended spell points. Current contract magic mana value, April 4th. Current highest spellcasting ring level, first ring. Specialty, none. Spell. Magic trick, blade protection, magic explosion. First circle spells, water creation / drought spell, mage armor, shield spell, elemental absorption. Spellbook, Introduction to the Balance, Burning Hand, Introduction to Elegance, Armor of Aegiscythe, Introduction to Analysis, Thundering Waves, Introduction to Silver Threads, Great Strides, Introduction to Frivolity, Healing Arts. These are all his achievements in the past half-month. It turns out that the decision to focus on the kitchen was indeed correct. With sufficient nutritional supplementation, not only has he gained significant weight, but his physical attributes have also improved slightly, equivalent to saving 100 purification points. You should know that this is only half a month's time. If he can continue to improve at this rate, in another 6 months, he will be able to increase his physique to 20 points. Cough. Of course, this is impossible. The resources consumed by attribute growth are not linear. The further you progress, the more difficult it becomes. It's not just about becoming stronger and requiring more nourishment. More importantly, as a regular human being, his own racial genes greatly limit his potential. Being able to raise the physical attribute to 9 points through diet, earning 100 purification points, Hawthorne is already very satisfied. As for higher levels, it's probably necessary to spend purification points honestly to buy them. In addition to the growth of his abilities, his biggest gain was learning a new trick and 2 one-ring spells. Due to concerns about his safety, all the new spells he learned were protective spells. Among them, the Spellblade Protection that does not require mana can provide him with temporary resistance to piercing, blunt, and slashing damage, making him no longer fear sudden enemy ambushes. Shielding spells can instantly block deadly attacks, so he no longer worries about being sniped by bows or crossbows. And absorbing elements, it specifically guards against elemental damage such as fire, freezing, lightning, and strong acid. When combined with the shield technique mentioned above, it is nearly impossible for ordinary people to harm him. In this way, his current combat power has truly surpassed that of an ordinary person. As for the output aspect, although he hasn't learned many output spells, he is not lacking either. The free magic explosion of tricks is almost as powerful as a heavy crossbow. The spell books that Heidi gave him also contain practical low-level output spells such as Burning Hands and Thunder Wave. While he may not be able to challenge strong enemies, he can definitely bully ordinary people without any problems. The only problem is that he must hold these books in order to cast the spells written in them. So in the future, he will have to carry these thick and heavy magic books with him, and then switch his equipment according to the needs of the battlefield during battles. It sounds like a monkey show, but considering the current situation, it is also a helpless move. Perhaps, this is the pain of an illegal spellcaster. Sigh. Looking at the system, after selecting 3 buildings, Hawthorne had 850 purification points remaining. In his mind, he simulated the upcoming battle scenes, and the more he thought about it, the more troublesome it seemed. Too weak. Or, simply, directly promote to level 2 now. At this moment, looking at his only level 1 warlock profession, he couldn't help but have a bold idea. To level up to level 2, you only need 300 purification points. You are still quite comfortable now. Shouldn't we just go straight to the point? According to common sense, after reaching level 2 as a warlock, he will gain another core ability of this profession, demonic invocation. In short, this is an alternative set of techniques that use magic to enhance the power of magic or increase its usage. For example, Repulsion Magic Burst can push back enemies when your spell, Magic Burst, hits them. Shadow Armor can permanently grant you the protection of the spell. Mage Armor, Rune Guardian's Eye, allows you to master all languages, and so on and so forth. In the game, a level 2 warlock can learn 2 free demonic summons and make changes to them upon leveling up. However, reality is not a game. In games, regardless of who the master is, all sorcerers have the same selection of spells and abilities to summon magical energy. At most, they may have some unique abilities at higher levels, but overall, there is not much difference. According to the game background, the spells and magical summonings of the warlock are bestowed or taught to you by the master based on their own abilities, so the actual situation of each warlock is very different. Just like Hawthorne, when he became a sorcerer, Heidi only shared with him 1 trick and 1 spell, far fewer than the 2 tricks and 4 level 1 spells that a proper sorcerer should have in the game. However, he already has 4 points of mana at level 1, and he can fully recover it in just 1 hour. If this were to be revealed, it would make other sorcerers extremely envious. It can be seen from this that what will happen to each sorcerer after leveling up still depends on the actual situation. According to the background description, the ability to summon magic energy also requires him to learn it himself in order to obtain it. Considering this, he eventually slowly moved his finger away from the system interface. Forget it, I haven't even understood these few books myself. I haven't learned all the spells in them yet, so I won't rush into the next level. He thought this way. However, suddenly, the system interface flickered, and then a symbol of an envelope appeared in the upper right corner. Hawthorne's expression was slightly surprised. He knew that this was the kind of notification message players would receive and a major event was about to happen in the game. He quickly tapped on it, and then, the one above made his pupils suddenly contract. Surprisingly, so fast. Chapter 20 Witch's Night, only 10 days left. At the entrance of the monastery, Heidi just came back, carrying a basket and heading towards the kitchen. Inside the basket, there were 2 fresh sea fish. At this moment, the sky has already darkened slightly. She just went out to trade with the returning fishermen and buy the freshest sea fish. This era is far from popularizing refrigerators. Fortunately, she can use magic to freeze these 2 fish, ensuring that they can stay fresh in the coming days. She walked lightly, because she was feeling very joyful at the moment. The progress of the master's magic studies had finally made a breakthrough in the past 2 days, and there was also a noticeable physical development. She had to work harder and help him replenish his nutrition properly. She walked happily and steadily like this, and at this moment, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind her. Heidi, how have you been lately? She turned her head and saw a butterfly walking towards her gracefully. Underneath her nun's robe, there was a strange movement. Apparently, this creature thought there were no outsiders in the monastery, so it didn't bother to grow legs and instead used its antennae to move. Heidi sighed and felt a headache, feeling that she had increased the exposure risk for her other sisters. And in response to this, the butterfly remained completely unaware, smiling sweetly, and asked her, "Have you been doing well lately?" Heidi smiled and greeted her, "Everything is going well, my dear sister. How have you been lately?" After all, the other party just lent me a large sum of money recently, and Heidi knows that this witch definitely has a lot more to gain, so in order to please her master, she must establish a good relationship with her. Upon hearing this, the butterfly's smile faded, and she let out a soft sigh. It's still the same. Those lost memories can never be found again. Perhaps before long, I will lose everything and have to rely on my sisters for care. The Witch of Memory will lose her memory on the night of the witches, and may also lose a part of her power as a result. In earlier years, these situations were still manageable, but in recent years, the situation of butterflies has been getting worse and worse. She is very afraid, perhaps after the next witch's night, she will completely lose control and become an irrational, insane monster. Heidi, upon hearing this, also showed a sad expression. She then walked over and hugged her arm, comforting her. It's okay, it definitely won't escalate to that point. You have such good relationships with people, everyone will be willing to help you. And besides, thinking positively, there is probably still over a year until the next witch's night, right? If we all work together, we will definitely be able to find the perfect solution. She encouraged like this, hoping to make the butterfly happy with these kind words. However, unexpectedly, after she finished speaking, the look in the butterfly's eyes towards her carried a hint of strangeness. Heidi, you didn't notice it at all? Heidi was suddenly taken aback. What? It's the night of the witch. Butterfly said, the next night of the witch should be just around the corner. It could be as soon as a week, or as long as half a month, but it will come. Just like before an earthquake, many animals can sense it. Before the night when the twin moons hang high and the magic surges, many evil spirits and monsters also have a sense. The witches are no exception. Although they still cannot accurately perceive the time of its arrival, they rely on methods such as astrology, calendars, and divination spells to determine its exact date. However, at least half a month to a month in advance, they will have some kind of intuition. And with that, Heidi's face suddenly changed. She truly had no warning. She had no idea that this was about to happen. And looking at her expression, the experienced butterfly instantly understood everything. As a result, her eyes became very sad. I thought that when you borrowed money from me, it was to prepare for the next witch's night, but you didn't even notice? The method each witch uses to pass through the witch's night is an absolute secret and cannot be shared with anyone. Otherwise, if the information is leaked, it will undoubtedly bring disaster upon oneself. So, even though their relationship is still good, but Dai is not clear about what method Heidi used to spend the witch's night. Facing her confused gaze, Heidi had no choice but to explain with a forced smile, I've been dealing with some other troubles recently, so I haven't paid attention to these signs. Ah, thank you for reminding me. I owe you one again, sister. She said this, her heart pounding, unable to help but complain. How could this happen? It's only been half a year since the last witch's night, and now it's happening again. It's too frequent. The intelligent beings of the material world hate the night of the double moons, because every time this happens, evil gods cause chaos, monsters revolt, and major forces suffer significant losses. And compared to ordinary people, extraordinary magical beings like witches despise such days even more. After all, ordinary creatures, if lucky enough, can completely avoid the influence of chaotic magic, while witches cannot hide and have to directly bear their effects. I'm afraid, only the eternal and insane demons in the bottomless abyss, as well as the conspirators of major forces, and the wicked gods with ulterior motives, in short, those extremely powerful individuals who can influence the entire world with a single move and indeed harbor malicious intentions, would enjoy such days. And in response to this, the butterfly also sighed. Who knows, the movement of the stars is always like this. Before the exact omen arrives, no one can guarantee when the next witch's night will be. Saying this, her expression became increasingly worried. Heidi, although you may not like to hear this, based on my sister's experience, losing the ability to sense the approaching signs of the witch's night could very likely be a premonition of something very bad. So, you must take good care of yourself. After saying this, with a sympathetic and worried look, the butterfly turned around and left. Heidi, on the other hand, silently swallowed a mouthful of saliva, her heart filled with worries about the future. What's wrong with me? Why is there suddenly no accurate premonition? Is it because of the relationship with the Master? After being purified by the power of the Master, my body and strength have indeed undergone many subtle changes. What will happen when the witch's night arrives in this state? Let's put that aside for now and stick to the original strategy. Let's prepare well. However, before that, the first thing one must do is take care of the Master. With these thoughts in mind and a heart full of worries, Heidi put the fresh fish she had bought back in the kitchen, then walked quickly towards Hawthorne's room. However, when she pushed open the door and walked into the room, she saw Hawthorne with the same worried expression, walking quickly towards her and grabbing her arm. Heidi, do you know, in 10 days, to be precise, in 238 hours, the dreaded witch's night that you all hate is coming? Upon hearing this, Heidi's expression suddenly turned shocked. You, how do you know so clearly?